Hello everybody. Welcome to Event Tech Talks. Tonight we're going to be talking about the subject of managing multiple event technology vendors and event tech, which seems to be an increasing trend. We've seen it ourselves with our own events that we're using more and more technology each year and more companies each year. And I've also been interviewing a number of event organisers who say that it's becoming a challenge for them to kind of get multiple vendors to work together and also make sure that the technology talks to each other. And these guys are from technology companies. I'll get them to introduce themselves because they do a much better job at it than me. So Carsten, we'll start with you if you want to tell everybody what you do.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Carsten. I've been working in event tech for about 10 years. And last year I left a company called eTouches. So I've seen both. I've seen best in breed solutions and end-to-end solutions. And today I help event organizers with the bridge between finding the right technology and also implementing it.
Cool. Matt.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Matt Wilson. I'm the sales and marketing manager for a company called D2I Systems. We're an event technology specialist development house, and I suppose come to the panel really with a bit of experience from the organiser's perspective, having worked for UBM, Tarsus and Informa. So our experience is really kind of built up of seeing how technology is put into a business from the angle of our client, as well as kind of delivering it from a software vendor's perspective.
Ben.
Hi everyone, my name's Ben Wallace. So I work for an agency called DRP. DRP is a full service communications agency. I've worked there for just over 22 years, and I head up the digital team. So I manage a team of about 40 specialists building digital solutions, bespoke digital solutions, of which partition of the team build event solutions for our event side business as well.
Thank you very much. Before we just start jumping into questions, there is Me Too running tonight, so if you want to text your questions in, you can do using the link that will be up on the screen following this slide. But we could also have a catch box, so if you want to do old school and stick your hand up, then I can throw it at you, and don't sue me if I hit you in the face. A bit of context, going back to what I said before, when I started out in the events industry probably 10 years ago, event technology wasn't really a term. We had registration companies like D2I and Matt here at N200, and apart from event websites, that was kind of your core event technology, shall we say. As our industry's grown and expanded and realised that they can harness different technologies to engage attendees like Me Too and Glitter and other technologies, Wi-Fi is now more of a service that people are bringing on site. There's more and more technology being utilised or available to be utilised by event organisers, but that also brings up its own challenges. Speaking from personal experience, and we have some great partners for Event Tech Live, is that we have 20 plus technology partners working on Event Tech Live this year. It's become apparent that it's a long and lengthy process and pretty much a full-time job to get everything in place ready so that on the day it works harmoniously. And some things you can't really test until it's coming a little bit later. There's obviously also in that instance where companies might not necessarily have worked together before with each other, and that's something that as an organiser we need to have that discussion with them. And how can those two companies work together? Is it even possible? Is there integration possibilities? In some cases, it's not, because the development costs outweigh the benefits and the costs outweigh the benefits to us as well. That also then raises the question is, should an organiser invest in utilising one company, or shall we say an all-in-one solution, so that that information talks to each other in the data and the technology is already integrated? I'm going to start off with a poignant question first, though, when it comes to the organisers. I'm going to speak to Ben first because he's works with as an agency with a lot of organisers and brands. Do you think it should be the job of the event owner or the organiser to manage those companies working together, or do you think that it's something that the technology providers should be more going out there and getting those integrations done, so when the organiser wants to use different people, it's already set in place?
I suppose it's a good question. I suppose it depends on the scenario, really. We're used to both ends of the scale as well. I mean, within DRP, because we're a comms agency, we have in-house events and event managers and event organisers, as well as within the digital team, we have pure digital project managers. If we are to take responsibility for delivering multiple services for an event, then generally our event manager becomes the point of contact, the one person who stitches all those communication, all those people together, and would generally do that piece of work. However, we also work with corporations and businesses that prefer to do their own event organising themselves. I wouldn't say that we just leave it to the event managers, though within that business, to control technology and make sure that everything's joined up, because in truth we're not the kind of people, and I don't think these guys are either, that would go along and just do your bit. You're out to sort of make the experience as good as it can be, and I think you've got to work with other partners, with other people, to make sure that as a partnership you deliver that solution. So but both parts really are, like I say, our in-house project managers, we call them project managers, but event managers would be there to join everything up and create less communication and make sure that everyone's joined up and everyone's got the same approach. But with regards to technology, I don't think you can expect everyone to understand all technology, and therefore I think it's partly everyone's responsibility to be partnered and joined up to make sure that we're all working together.
And I'm assuming that's something that you've experienced before. You may have some in-house technology yourselves that the client wants to use, but may have another company they've already got an existing relationship. How do you guys approach that scenario at DRP if it's somebody that you've not necessarily worked with before?
If we haven't worked with before. I suppose we've done it for so long, really, that it's second nature. Some of don't get me wrong, we don't just put huge events on. We run lots of sort of medium and small sized events as well. But we've engaged for a number of years different partners, different suppliers to achieve results for a client. For instance, hologram material. The first time we used holographic material and technology for a client was to do a hologram presentation to enhance an audience, a presentation for an audience. And we didn't, we weren't skilled at hologram. We didn't know anything about it at the time, so we used a partner for that. We treated them as part of our team. I think that's really important. As the end of the day, everyone is there to put on that experience for the client. So I think you've got to treat everyone as if this is one team and this is what we've got to achieve. So therefore, even down to things like the communication briefs and getting everyone together pre-show and all of that kind of stuff makes everyone feel like they're all part of one team working on something. Yeah.
Matt, you mentioned that obviously being D2I and you have a suite of services available to people that in most instances people either come to use modules or the full suite of services. Yeah. Do you guys integrate with other companies, and if so, how do you approach that as well?
Yeah, we do. We do quite regularly, really. I think in terms of how we approach it, it tends to be a decent conversation really as partners with that third party, the other technical partner. But we really try to kind of engage our clients to make sure that they are involved in that conversation and that they have a level of ownership there, which ultimately always has to be there. If they don't have that ownership, unfortunately, they will leave themselves exposed over a period of time if that person leaves the organiser, and then they're left with two contractors with integrated technology that have more knowledge of the delivery of that technology for their event than the actual organiser. So we try to approach it from that standpoint, really. But as with all these things, it's not. There's no exact science to it. It has to be a partnership, and it tends to be a learning curve for both businesses and the organiser themselves. So.
Yeah. Carsten, you've worked for large technology companies who offer multiple technologies, and now you work with organisers, helping them to kind of identify what's best for them, but also, I suppose, help them get that technology in place as well. What's your experience when working with organisers? What are the challenges that you see that they're facing when they want to use multiple things?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, I've read an article recently that event planners have one of the five most stressful jobs in the world. So they shouldn't be really dealing with anything API integration related or anything about data migration or bringing things over from one system to the other. I think their focus is, or their big challenge is to basically create great content and bring people together and engage with each other. So I definitely agree that they shouldn't be responsible for the integration part or for bringing technologies together. But they should work hand in hand, either with the suppliers or with a third-party expert that can also share best practices and also share some of the experiences with them.
Something that I've seen, and I'm not sure if it's a trend or just something that specific companies have decided to identify of putting somebody in place, but on my LinkedIn connections, I've seen a number of event technology specialists pop up, which is, again, quite a broad term because it could mean that they just deal with the AV. Do you think the environment that's being created where there are so many technologies potentially to be able to be used on an event is creating a need for somebody that has a broad overview of things and then has the mindset to be able to manage stuff? I'm going to throw that out there and anybody can comment on that.
I think I've come across that. I've definitely met a couple of people who have branched out from, in my experience, they've come from working in a technology company like ourselves that have then become perhaps consultants for in the event space, but for more of a technical angle. So I've definitely met a couple of people who are actually making individual careers out of that themselves. Especially one of which had a background within registration, actually, for a large business, and now was sort of putting him out there as a consultant with a specialism around registration for large events and sort of.
And if I'm not wrong, DRP also has somebody internally that is essentially kind of looking at technologies and what can be used by yourselves and the clients. That's right, isn't it? I'm sure that's right.
So again,
you've got somebody employed at DRP. I can't remember his name. Callum. That's it.
Okay.
Callum's job is essentially to go and research and look
Callum's
at
a genuinely very bright lad, and he's got a great skill at looking in sort of future technologies and insight. And he's out there sort of delving into sort of what's next, basically. And does some very good talks on sort of what he's found and what he thinks will be the future. Connected with events, absolutely, but with communications in truth and social and different channels as well. Yeah.
Carsten, is that how you came to be doing what you're doing now? Is that there was a need for the gap and somebody who had an overview and an experience with event technology?
Yeah, I must say from my experience, some of the companies, they've grown organically from like 10 years ago where they maybe started with something. And over the years, more and more technology suppliers came into the market and they basically focused on one particular need. And they did that particular thing very, very well, and they basically focused all their energy onto developing that further. So I saw definitely that most of my clients, let's say it, didn't get the best what they were looking for. So with this mindset, I basically came to the conclusion that best in craft or best in breed is something everyone should consider at least, or maybe don't take off their list. Let's say I also get when people decide to make decisions for end-to-end solutions. That's no problem, but at least today it's possible to also choose best in breed.
Right. That kind of leads nicely onto a question that's being asked here by a gentleman called Bert. What's the benefit in having several technology working together over having an all-in-one solution, a jack of all trades but a master of none? Matt, do you want to kind of comment on that? Because you're essentially an all-in-one platform.
Absolutely, I'm completely biased on this.
Yeah.
So there are many, many reasons I would say, and I would, I'm the sales manager for D2I Systems, why you would have an all-in-one solution. There are so many benefits for modules that are designed to work with one another, from their inception. If you're working with several technologies, the question is, if you're going to integrate them, there's got to be a very, very good reason for it to do so. And if you cannot, as if we're an all-in-one provider, if we cannot give that solution or that tool to get the respect of our clients, it's our duty to kind of offer them the best solution we can. If we do not provide it, then there is the benefit. That's completely a decent benefit from working with a number of systems that are linked together. But of course, ordinarily we'd say use ours all the time.
Carsten, you might have a slightly different of opinion, wanting best in breed.
Yeah, I mean, as an end-to-end solution, like if you think about it, it's very hard to maintain all these features and functionalities on all these modules. You almost need an entire development team just to focus on one area because technology is developing so quickly and so fast. And today, I mean, it's all about the experience for the client, for the attendee, for the participant. And if you can't set yourself apart with a great experience, then sometimes you're left behind. So that's why I think that a lot of, not everyone, but from my experience, some companies out there claim they can do everything very well, but they don't. And that's a challenge because today, there's over 93, on average, companies use 93 different technologies. So why shouldn't event-driven companies use like 4 or 5 or 6 different tools? I don't see why not. Because everyone else in marketing technology, like lots of people use more than 10 different technologies, or even 93.
Yeah, I suppose when you think about it from an organiser's point of view, we're talking specifically here about event tech, and then when you kind of go outside of specific to our industry, and it might be Salesforce, Marketo, other solutions that they're trying to utilise with registration data and marketing automation and things like that. I suppose that adds extra layers of complexity even on top of what we're specifically talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a lot. Like 10 years ago, it was quite hard to do an API, like an integration between systems. But today you have something called the platform as a service. So these technologies like Zapier or like Build.io, they are there to actually help organizers to plug and play systems together. So for example, today you can go on Build.io and you can choose your technologies and you can say, okay, I want this to flow then from there to there. So it makes it very, very easy, and I think it's going to be easier in the future.
So that's an interesting point that you make, that because I've spoken to some of my technology companies, and sometimes to put devs on to work on a small integration doesn't make sense to them as a whole business, and I totally understand that in terms of time, manpower and cost for one particular event. I suppose if I was running 600, it might be a slightly different conversation. But there are these platforms, like you say, Carsten, out there that provide an ease of ability, even at some basic level of integration. And I've actually seen on Zapier, I think Bizzabo have built some integrations already with certainly marketing platforms and other sales CRM platforms. Is it the duty of event technology providers to kind of build and develop that, do we think, or is that something that the organiser, if they want it enough, should go out there and kind of get a dev on it or spend some time on it doing it themselves? I don't know what you guys think.
I suppose the only way I can answer that really is what we talked about earlier with the digital team at DRP has grown organically from what the client has required, especially the event solution side of things. So our products, we've got to a place now where I'm just to the previous question, I'm kind of in the middle. I think there's advantages of both. I think there absolutely is. As a business, we're everything under one roof, we'd argue, and from a digital team and our event solutions, we've created a suite of products to support everyone on their live events, ranging from on-site registration through to on-site registration, through to an event app, digital touchscreen table plans, and everything in between, because the database flow. So you could argue against Carsten there and say that actually there's a beautiful seamless suite of products there that the client can pick and choose which one they want to use from. But arguably, and to the side of that as well, if you want to go and integrate other agencies, then you've got to take on board the management of those agencies and the communication stuff. But in truth, there are some times when you've got to bring something in that's unique that actually one of your products doesn't do well, and therefore you've got to accept at that point, then actually, yes, there is a benefit to bringing in some best-in-class, best of breed that you need to do there. And that's kind of how we've grown organically, and what's been added to DRP Digital over the years are the things that have become the more common thread of things that people have required for events. And then when something bespoke comes along, we'll probably change that.
Matt, if you've got a question, do you want the throwable mic, mate? Because I won't be able to hear you.
Yeah. I think it's more of a comment. I mean, it's one thing to talk about tech being integrated for an experience and making the experience better. It's another thing for the organizer who may most likely have multiple databases, maybe even spreadsheets, maybe any other form of way of capturing the data. It's a data bit that's forgotten about. It's making a reg talk to an app, to a website, whatever, fantastic, makes the end user experience great. But there's so much to be done in the back end for the actual data piece to flow properly. So it's kind of just a bit more of a comment following on from what you guys are just saying. Cause it's
just going on to that comment then, do we think that it's just, we're at a period of time now where event technology is kind of being used and more and more and more people are starting to really engage with it and build it into their core plans as part of their event. We kind of just need to get over that little bit of a hill of getting into the point where it becomes a little bit smoother running and more people have ended up working together, organisers are a little bit more knowledgeable about what's possible and what's not, and maybe even just simplify what they're asking to be talking to. I don't know who I'm asking that to, by the way, but...
Matt's point about data is crucial because...
I've got a loud enough voice. We'll use these people next year. Hello? Because when we first bought Confex, we basically had about 4 or 5 technology suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
Then we introduced a data manager, and he went ballistic because data was going all over the place and we were losing control. So as the years have gone on since we've had it, we whittled down the suppliers we've got, and we're probably working with 2 technology suppliers at the moment. And I think we also got to differentiate between a trade show, exhibition organisers and conference organisers, because I think, bizarrely, our audience are event planners and buyers, but they don't engage with the app at all. No matter how much we've tried, they never engaged with the app. So we've got to listen to them. Is it worth our while having an app at all? And having to talk to 4 different suppliers at one time, which we used to have to do. And as I say, we're now down to 2 technology suppliers, which gives people 2 different points of contact. Our marketing team aren't having to do that. Our data team know who they're talking to. And actually, it's made life a hell of a lot easier for us to actually do that. At the end of the day, from a trade show organizer, the person coming through the door is our priority. If they're having difficulty downloading apps or registering, etc., they come to the show unhappy, which makes our exhibitors unhappy. So we're trying to ease everything for them going forward. And one of the things is actually reducing the number of technology suppliers. I don't know how you manage 20 at all.
I've got very good suppliers.
Right answer.
I think I also see other organisers doing exactly the same, which is almost trying to pull back a little bit and simplify things. And sometimes that comes to using less technology providers who offer more full service. And sometimes it's like you said, John, identifying stuff that's not necessarily adding the value to their particular event, that they can, utilise those resources in other areas. I would probably have no event at Event Tech Live if I used 2 people, because I think everybody would kick off that we weren't showcasing technology, but that's just our unique proposition. I have to say personally, for Event Tech Live, all our technology providers are very willing and want to showcase how the technology can be used. In fact, after this at Event Tech Live, we've actually got a bit of a showcase session with a couple of the suppliers talking about how they have worked together. So that's probably the next piece on from this.
But we had, initially when we did it, our registration company didn't want to talk to the app people. Why did they want access to the data there? Can I give it to them? And it's all this privacy, and thinking, yes, of course you can. But the angst and the issues we had to say, for sake, the clock is ticking, guys, sort it out. So
I'd say that's a problem with your supplier. Because as the data owner, it should be really you that dictates how that works. There may be a cost implication. They may be going, you're going to have to pay for this, which is fair, I think. But from an organiser's
point of view, conference organiser, I can see having to work with different technology suppliers, because the conference, a big conference of 5,000 delegates coming from internationally, is a totally different kettle of fish than having 8,000 people come through a door every 2 days, and they come when they want to. These are paid for delegates, so I can see having to plan a bit better and having the technology there, and using different technology partners. But for big trade show organisers, big, medium-sized trade show organisers like us, it's just been a headache.
It's not always about reducing communication, is it? Or management as well, because in truth, one thing that I found with a number of our clients is that a lot of the technologies that they use overlap. So, you're paying one agency to provide this tool and actually this tool for this agency, but they can both do a similar thing as well. And that's been a bit of a thorn in some of our client side, is that actually they're investing money into 2 agencies or 3 agencies where a product does overlap with functionality or collecting data or whatever you're doing with data. So it's not just about managing different companies, which takes time and can be difficult. So, I
think it also lends the question, and although this conversation isn't about GDPR, that GDPR will become a thought factor in where, especially when it's a data integration and you're sending registration data to an event website, creating profiles there, sending delegate information to an event app and so on and so forth, that will be more of a heavy consideration, because that has implications in terms of security and such. In terms of where we are as an industry though, what do you think the biggest barrier is to people kind of just having that conversation with people, or do you think it's other things that are getting in the way of them being able to, in some cases, get their providers to work together? Matt, do you have anything?
I think the biggest challenge you'll have, and where we've been to work with new partners, and we can see there has been previously some issue with an integration. You've kind of walked into the tail end of what can only be described as an event tech implosion. Everything's just gone to the wall, and you're going there really to start that again. It tends to be that human element, although. We're talking about technology. The technology is a huge red herring. It's always about the human interaction and about taking ownership. And I think Matt's point about data sums that up. That has to be the beginning point. And normally there is not a conversation about that data. And when you're looking at integrations, the strange thing is an integration is just getting something to talk to one another. But then there's a wider conversation that's normally forgotten, which is what data are you looking to push over? And that's the biggest thing that stumps big projects. And actually what's really unique about the events market, which is a problem we all know and love, is that the show must go on. You have a timeline and there is a deadline, and that door's going to open. And if you haven't had that conversation and you're 6 months out from your show, that's a very, very dangerous position to be in. That tends to be what really elongates the delivery of a project, and also helps the cost just spiral out of control. That's the biggest challenge we find.
Carsten, do you have any?
Yeah, I was thinking about John's answer earlier. I agree that obviously is completely dependent on the event type, and this is something that most technology providers also forget, that an exhibition is completely different from a conference. So, I must say my experience in conference space is not as big, but yeah, I just I was thinking about that. Sorry.
What do you think the future looks like for this? Do you think you look at some of the larger technology companies or more well-known platforms, let's say MailChimp, for example, whole suite of integrations. It's just a case of connect your account and off you go. Do you think we'll get to that stage in the event technology space? Because I see a lot of the larger or leading companies doing that. But then I also see a lot of new providers with similar technologies, it might be registration or Q&A or other stuff coming into the market, which then adds another layer of complexity to that. What do you think the future looks like for this? Is it something that's going to become better or worse?
I think it's going to become better. I don't think companies can afford to not integrate well. Because people have choices now, and I think that when you're talking to clients, they do have preferred methods and technologies to use, and I think it would be naive of agencies like ourselves not to create better integrations with other leading products. You've got to.
Yep. Carsten, we've got a question here for you. As a consultant, how often does the actual data integration question come up? Is it something that comes up often?
Every time.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So for my clients, mostly it lives in the CRM system. This is where the whole data lives primarily. But yeah, this question comes up almost every single time.
Why is it coming up?
Because as Matt said, and as you said as well, Ben, the data itself, it's so important to have it in to manage it right and to have it in one place. So I think the future of event tech going to be in having one centralized space where you can see all your analytics, all your dashboards, and all your data. You have everything in one place.
So if we think about things then in the terms of who we are as event organisers, we're essentially marketers. We're there to market an event, a speaker. We're there to market our event to get attendees, exhibitors, sponsors, etc. Do we think that is the marketing hub going to be the central point of integration? So all the information feeds back into that. An example of that may possibly be the acquisition of C-Event by a company that also owns Marketo, which is essentially a marketing platform, and all that data feeding back into that platform for organisers, which is as far as I'm concerned, a platform that's used by at least a large proportion of the larger organisers to facilitate their marketing automation. Is that a way that it could possibly go? What do you think, Matt? You seem like you've got a comment there.
Yes and no. The challenge is that, and I'm totally guilty of doing this from my experience. I always think of the B2B trader organiser because that's where I kind of picked up my experience. With our experience at D2I, what we're tending to see is the world's a lot larger than our kind of very siloed area of the event spectrum. There are very big events teams that don't operate in a standard way. They are not there to support and run just an events business. They're there to support a wider organisation. It could be a charity, it could be any number of things. But at that point, when you're looking at an integration, actually a lot of that, although marketing is, we are a marketing product, the reason for those events existing in that type of an organisation may very well be to collect data for sales teams, for maybe an insurance company or something like that. So there is a different angle to take on this, which isn't just completely focused on an event organiser. So I think that will change how integrations act in that sense.
Okay. We've got an interesting question here, which it says for anyone on the panel. Do we think that avoiding integration is a good idea? Should we just forget it? Don't even worry about it. Just use siloed technologies and off we go.
That would be mad.
Why? Why do you
That
think
would
that?
be completely mad. To use siloed technologies and have all that behavioural data and not have access to it in this day and age, any business that decides to take that route will be punished severely by the market. Eventually there will come a time, as there was in 2008, you'll have a recession, and at that point you're going to need that data to make sure your business stays afloat. And if you don't have it, and if you use siloed technologies, you're toast.
Okay. Anybody else have a different?
Is that a no?
Very strong one.
Yeah, I agree with Matt as well there. It's very crucial. But also asking the organizer first, as we said earlier, what kind of data do you have to actually transform from the one place to the other? And sometimes I find most organizers don't really know what they want to, what systems they want to talk to they want to have them talk to each other, and what data they want to transfer. So that's always the first question.
Do you think that's just down to the reason they've not actually answered the why first?
Yes.
They just think it's something that's necessary for the business operation.
Yeah, I agree.
Interesting that you say that, because I've seen that as well, where companies think that they want things to talk to each other, and actually it's quite the opposite. They're looking at the wrong bits talking to each other.
That
Matt?
where the consultant comes back in there.
You think so, Matt?
Yeah, potentially, because if depending on who's making the decision at the organizer, I guess, as well. I mean, if it's from a directive up top, then hopefully down the chain that will follow through. If it's someone in marketing that wants the new flashiest thing to go together, they'll just say, well, I need that to work. There's no strategy behind it. So
Yeah.
if you did have the consultants come in and someone who specialises in integration and technology and everything else, then quite potentially you'll see more of that kind of stuff, or that type of person.
We had, when Matt, I worked at UBM as well, and I remember actually we were told, right, we had running about 20 shows in the UK in UBM, and then a dictate came from above, we are going to be using this mobile app for all the shows. And it came and was chosen by a technologist, not a business. And it came down to my department, and we said, well, we don't want to use this one, we want to use that one. It's much better fitted for what our show. But no, the dictate came down from the technology, VP of technology at UBM, you'll be using this. I won't say who it was, because they don't exist anymore. But that's a wrong decision. It should be like a marketeer business. What do you want to get out of this?
Is that? Well, I think in some cases I would agree with you that is the wrong decision, because like you say, nuances of different events might need different requirements. I can also see it from a business point of view in terms of cost efficiencies and also management of being able to ensure that there's technical support for that app rather than 12. Can also, if you have multiple app vendors or things like that, can cause probably a host of all issues.
But only if it's fit for purpose for all of those events.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, then it's incorrect. Yeah.
We kicked a fuss, but we
sure.
got knocked down. So.
Do you think it opens up an opportunity for our industry for somebody to come in and actually make it their job, or business, shall we say, to actually work with technology providers to make these integrations happen, maybe even as a separate development house for organisers who they can go to and say, listen, we want that to talk to that, can you make that happen for us? Does it offer that kind of like that freelancer, consultant, developer role, do you think? Or do you think it needs to be managed by the technology companies themselves?
So if that's just engineering someone in between to create more communication and lengthen durations of projects, essentially. I think
within those agencies, we should have the expertise to be able to deal with integration and talk to other agencies about things and talk to the client about
I
those
agree
things.
with that completely.
So from this conversation, I'm kind of understanding that there's a couple of ways an event organizer can go. They can either work out what they want first, resource the technology that already talks to each other so they get that as fit for purpose and it already works. So we mentioned an organisation called Event Tech Tribe earlier, who are essentially a conglomerate of event technology providers who have already done all the API and the integration work, and then you can use registration, or you can use their app, or you can use their speaker management tool, and if you want to expand into those other areas, it all works together. Or they could possibly just bite the bullet, and if they want something bad enough, pay for it to be integrated and facilitated. Is there any more questions from the audience before we... Abby?
I just have a comment on that, and I think that communication point, sorry, please don't throw the microphone, I will drop it. that communication thing is really key. So when we're integrating with somebody else, it's all about, the event organiser will put us together and just go, right, okay, can you talk to each other and just make this work, please? And if those conversations go well, if they don't go well, if we can't integrate, then they'll say, okay, fine, thanks very much, we won't be using you. But those conversations have to come from between the technology providers, and it should, in my opinion, it should be the event organiser that just goes, there you go, talk to one another and you work it out. And then you get the best solution between the...
Do you think there's a place, Abby, for the event technology providers to come together and have that conversation before an event organiser even needs to try and facilitate that? Because like Matt said earlier, they're busy planning the event, they're on with it, it's an extra job for them, whereas you guys are all in the same industry anyway.
Definitely. I think the problem comes in when you're slightly competitive on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So if it was two completely separate technologies that were coming together, that would be nice. But actually, where there's an overlap, that's where the conversations can go a bit awry, I think, and that's why you don't get people sitting down together at a table going, right, okay, how can we do this better together more?
And that's one of the biggest barriers then, right?
Yeah.
Is the actual protection of a business. Matt?
Well, I think much like what you're saying, Ben, I think a lot of companies will start to come together now with what you guys do, with what we do, with what you do. I don't know much about what you do yet. You're going to have your strategic partners, and you're going to have those types of companies that could deliver that width and breadth. But what happens when a startup comes along that might have a very exciting new idea, and the organizer says, you need to integrate with that because I want it.
Yeah.
But for us as the established tech companies, you might look at that and go, not sure yet, actually it takes us a ton of time and money to integrate with that, don't see the benefit, don't understand, all the different questions you can ask. Whose responsibility is it then? Because, of course, to your point, that could kick out that startup before they've even started.
I think it's very interesting because we've got a startup this year at Event Tech Live called Zenus. They're an agnostic supplier. They're biometric technology, facial recognition technology. So they don't actually supply anything themselves to the organizer, or the organizer can contract them and do business with them, and then if they've already got an event technology partner. Now, some event technology companies are already taking the step to have that integrated as part of their platform, so it makes, let's say, registration check-in easier. But that also creates that environment of an organizer that might want facial recognition on their event, but then needs to speak to their existing clients to actually get that done. I think it comes down to the fact that technology companies are businesses. They can't integrate with everything for everybody, but I do think it's down to the organizer. If they wanted something strongly enough, that they have to create the budget for that. And that's where the value comes. If they're willing to put a value against it in terms of investment, then obviously it's worthwhile doing. That's my opinion.
What we've got to remember is everything should come back to what's the return on this investment. Technology should only be the vehicle to get you the results. Yeah. It's as simple as that, and that's how we, And it's been filmed, isn't it? and streamed, so I just realised. I just spent 3 weeks working through iterations of a proposal for an app for someone who eventually said, do you know what, our people aren't going to use this.
Ouch.
And the conversation, that's kind of the facial expression I had as well. Which was kind of, you knew that at the start. So why was it different? Why have we come up with ideas for an app with augmented reality as well? The use of augmented reality in this app for actually the decision for the project not to go forward is that our people aren't going to do this. That clearly there's a gap in actually what's the return on this investment. Why am I communicating to these people? What have I got to communicate to these people?
Is that
and
not that seems to be an inherent problem and trend though with with any technology really. Sometimes it's you want shiny bells and whistles without actually making it deliver.
This client was bowled over by augmented reality and just wanted to get it in front of their people. But in truth, as we were saying from the start, is there really any value in, if that's the case, show them some augmented reality at the next conference they go to, but don't engineer something that you're going to invest lots of money and time into that actually is not going to deliver the results that you need.
Has anybody got any other questions or comments before we wrap things up? No?
Matt's put a question on there. Why can't one supplier do it all?
Actually, that's Matt Blaine, so he must be watching from the Middle East. So
I think he very much is.
Matt, why don't you answer that?
The idea is one supplier making it all, that would be an interesting... Well,
I don't think we're in that. I don't think as a society we're like that. Do you invest in one technology provider in your home? You don't. You get a Samsung TV and a Sonos sound system and an Apple phone.
Yeah.
But then to be honest with you, actually, you have third-party suppliers, don't you? Which I think is back to Ben's point about it doesn't necessarily fit within this industry, but you do have technology that does actually connect all your devices up at home and gets them to talk to each other.
But the response to that would be that there is always someone that will do something better than one of the things that you do.
Yeah. I personally think that if you understand your business objectives and you know the plan for the next 3 to 5 years and you're willing to invest in one technology provider, then that can be very financially and time valuable to you, because if you've understood that everything's going to work as it is for the next 3 to 5 years, then that's fine. If your events and business is forever changing and moving, then to invest in one solution to do everything, I don't think gives you the flexibility enough to be able to move with the times. Event technology's changed so much in the last 3 years.
Last year.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to kind of, as a larger organiser at least anyway, do you want to invest everything into one part and tie yourself in, and then all of a sudden you're kind of out of the game, you can't move with the times?
I think the solutions at the end of the day, sounds like such an obvious thing to say, but it will be economics that decides this per client. It's what suits their business model and what suits their organisational structure, their culture. That will be what drives whether you're going to use 3 or 4 integrations or work with one supplier. It's horses for courses, and I think that's going to be the great leveller with all the kind of event tech vendors working with one another.
It's also a budget question. Like, if you don't need all the fancy tools out there, you just need one simple tool for that job, then the question is, why would you invest into probably more expensive end-to-end solution when you can get the same kind of like core value from a single app for a single provider?
Yeah, I think also the draw sometimes of the all-in-one solution is you don't necessarily need it or everything that it does, but it's nice to kind of have it just in case. And that's where I see a lot of people going, oh, well, we don't really need speaker abstracts, but, we could use it if we need to, or we don't really need the app, but it kind of does it anyway. So, yeah, interesting. Any more questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much to our panel for taking these quite hard questions, I think. These guys will be around afterwards, and if you didn't learn enough here, come to Event Tech Talks, and Matt will be doing a session on the first day.